welcome to you all to our Social Engagement Committee meeting today. We have a webinar prepared for you, and this year our topic was that we have that we confront ourselves with the impact of the disturbances in the world on TA community. The world has changed in the last 5 years after COVID. The current wars in Ukraine and also in Gaza, Israel are responsible for a lot of pain in the directly confronted areas and for a lot of uncertainty in the world. Other wars in Sudan, for example, are mostly forgotten or under the radar of the media. In the last months, the irritating policy of the US administration has changed securities in the world too. American partnership is questioned for a lot of people in the world. So we had, firstly, in this year, in last year, we had a webinar on the personal impact of the situation, then one about the professional impacts. And today we would like to talk about the connection to our community, the TA community. And in our pre-discussion, we did not think about the formal TA organizations like IATA or ITAA, but more about our community style, maybe also about our theory and the living of it. We have two input givers today, Marina and Keith, and I would like to introduce them later. First, I want to give the word to my colleagues from the Social Engagement Committee that you can see them. Maybe you like to have a contact with them. So first I give to Luca.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Very looking forward working with you today. My name is Luca Fanari. I'm based in Italy and I'm a member of this committee, I think, for the past 2-3 years. And pass over the word to Sashi.
Thank you, Luca and Gunther. Hello, everyone. And some of my dear teachers like Charlotte are here. A special hello to all of you. I'm Sashi Chandran from Coimbatore, India, which is in the south of India. I'm a TSTA in education and a CTA in counseling, looking for an expansion. And I'm part of the SEC from the beginning with Gunther. Lovely to have you in this space. And welcome, Keith and Marina.
So I take the word. We have also some other members of the committee. First it's Piotr from Guatemala, but it's in the middle of the night for him. Therefore, we give him the sleep he needs for his work. And he will be in the second webinar we divided the world in two parts to cover all participants of the world. And this is the first part of it, and there will be a second part. And then Piotr will be with us. And also there is Vanessa in our committee, and she is not able to be here today. So not to talk too much, I'd like to introduce our two speakers, and we are very glad to have Marina Rajan Joseph, I hope I pronounce it right, from India in our middle, who will give us some input answers to the questions we will have in a moment. Also, you can say something about you, Marina, if you like.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, people from all over the world. I'm Marina. At present, I'm coming to you from the same place where Shashi is coming, southern part of India, Coimbatore. I'm a TSTA in education, and I'm happy to be in your midst to share my thoughts with you. Looking forward. Welcome to everybody.
Okay, now we have also the great pleasure to have Keith on board, Keith Tudor. Who are you, Keith?
I thought you were going to introduce me, Gunther. I'm Keith Tudor. I'm TSTA in the field, the CTA and the TSTA in the field of psychotherapy. And I'd like to just say Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, which is a greeting in the Māori language, the first language of my adopted homeland. And also to acknowledge Ke te whenua o te kaweroa maki toka kāinga naianei, which means that I'm acknowledging that my house sits on unceded ancestral lands of the local iwi, te kaweroa maki, and also like to acknowledge other people from Aotearoa, New Zealand in the room. Lovely to see you, and lovely to see many of you from all over the world, many of whom are colleagues and many of whom are friends. I'm very honoured to be invited to be part of this webinar.
Thank you, Keith. And I'd like to add that we have the great pleasure to welcome the this year EBMA receiver. You, as I heard, so it's an applause for you about your contributions to TA regarding critical TA and this part. I think it's the second time you received the EBMA. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So there's a series of EBMAs. So to continue, we don't have a lot of theoretical input in that, but I would like to give a short input. PJ, could you give me the slide about the style we are working together in our webinars? And some time ago, we committed in the committee that we are based on dialogue. And dialogue is a conversation with a purpose, is a civilized operation, democratic and constructive act. And I'm very thankful to Salma Siddiq, who brought that also to us. She is also a supporter of the TA community from Scotland. So dialogue is characterized by the respect. We know that from TA, I am okay, you are okay. And I come to the next corner. Very important, if we talk to each other, what we will do in the breakout rooms after the inputs of the speakers is to listen. Yeah, and listen is a very important part. Sometimes all a person wants is an empathetic ear. It's not that much interesting to discuss everything. That brings me to the next point. In a dialogue, it's important to suspend beliefs and judgments. We can slow down, we can pause, we can step back, we can be open to new ideas from others. Then the last two aspects of the dialogue are the relational ethics that was mentioned in the respect already, respect the other one. And also you can be open to speak from your heart, listen to your heart. It's not our topic to be that logical, analyzing people, but in that short time we can talk from our heart. So this is a short input or from the side how we can communicate with each other. So there are some other aspects I have to mention. PJ, can you take the slide away? I think I have to mention that webinar is recorded and it will be presented later, and you can look into it. That it's important for people who don't want to be seen with their face or something like that. It is recorded. And to the schedule, I already said we have the input part, where I will ask Marina and Keith some questions. This part will last for around 20 minutes. And after that, we have 25 minutes where you be sent in breakout rooms where you can exchange the input ideas with others, and also you can exchange what is important for you around the topic. So now let's come to the interview part. So Luca, am I right, or did I forget something?
I'll just mention the fact that breakout rooms are not recorded.
The breakout rooms are not recorded. Thank you. If there's anything, you can jump in and add something. So, PJ, can you bring Keith and Marina to the slide? Okay. So the first question we have to you regarding our topic is, how do you experience the impact of the social changes in the world on the TA community? Marina, can you start?
Yeah, and it's my observation that we have constructive and destructive incidents going on around us, which may be enhancing us or also withholding and stagnating the development of our community. So I see both kinds of things happening around the world. And I also, as I say this, I'm mindful of the fact that whatever we are able to do as a community, we are able to do that because we are standing on the shoulders of giants who walked before us. And also, how it affects us in subtle and gross ways. It's not just, everything is not gross always, and everything is not subtle. Both are happening, how it affects us. It's also my observation that the major chunk of the disturbances in the today's world are man-made or human-made, including the wars and the environmental impacts. It may be directly affecting the environment or indirectly affecting the environment. It may be due to mindless destruction of nature or natural resources or exploitation of resources. And I noticed that in spite of the development that humans have achieved, human mastery over nature is very minimal. Can I continue or do I wait for Keith? Along with the perceived disturbances in the world, I think we must also be mindful of the political polarizations and the acute sense of national borders, which is also contributing to the whatever disturbances we are observing.
Okay, thank you, Marina. Can I give the word to Keith? You come back in a minute. So Keith, what is your first answer?
I'm going to frame it in terms of what I see as some attacks. I think the challenges that we experience in the world have led to a series of attacks, one of which is about experience. People's experience of themselves is under attack, particularly around gender and gender identity. So people who identify in certain ways are being told that then that's not allowed anymore, or their passport is being rescinded and so on. I think there's a big attack on language. I think I detect a real sort of right-wing backlash against anything that's seen as politically correct or woke. And I've come under attack for that myself. I've been involved in quite a painful exchange with another professor of counselling where he wrote this right-wing diatribe. I wrote a kind of forensic analysis, and then we tried to have a conversation, but it was hopeless because we couldn't really, we were talking past each other. And most of that was around language. Even ideas about war, you know, is it war or is it invasion? Is it war or is it genocide? This gets us on to, I think, some difficult areas. I think there's also an attack on authority. Authority has become, shifted from, ideas about being benevolent to being dangerous when you have, presidents who acts in certain ways and says certain things. I think there's a kind of undermining of authority. I think in that same space, it's difficult to talk. Sometimes it feels difficult to talk about. Feels more difficult to talk about some things than others. It's more difficult to talk about genocide in Gaza than it is about the invasion of Ukraine, for instance, I would say. And then I think there's another attack which is about knowledge. What is known? How do we know things? And this comes into the area about post-truth politics, feelings becoming facts. This is back to Gingrich and the idea that if I'm fearful of something, that's as much a fact as another fact. And so there's a real sort of discussion, almost an impossibility of discussion.
Okay, so you focus on the various aspects of attack. So Marina, I would like to ask you, what does that mean? What you see about the impacts for the future of TA?
I would say that a good understanding of the theory of TA helps us as professionals to make sense of the phenomenon of what is going around between people, between communities, between countries, and internationally. What brings us together here today is, in my thinking, is to go beyond just an understanding. It is to think of how can we respond, what can we do as a community. So in my observation, in my thinking, being a psychotherapy, primarily a psychotherapeutic theory, TA, most of the professionals in TA engage more in psychotherapy than community building work. This is my observation and my thinking. So me being coming from an educational aspect, I always think of it around education. And I'm just wondering if all of us would take the role of educators. It is beyond our certifications. I'm not talking about certification, but if all of us would be educators of the community, that's the future for TA community that I see. Can we build our community? Can we develop our community? Bringing a sense of development in people beyond racial, national, international borders and cultures as people.
So thank you, Marina. This community building aspect is, I think that's important. We are professionals and people working sometimes one-to-one or one-to-a-client system, but and we have TA organizations, but what is the real community aspect? How do we meet with each other? Are there community institutions for us? Say, for example, open groups or something like that that people can join if they want to talk about something. So, okay, Keith, what is your idea about the TA future around that?
Thanks. I'm smiling because it's always interesting to go second. I say, oh, I agree with Marina. And I think there's a stage before community building, which I wasn't going to say this, but I'm kind of riffing in terms of what I want to say. I think there's more analysis we need to do before building. In some ways, I think we probably need to do some deconstructing before reconstructing. And the reason for that is because all of the examples that I said in the first part, I think you can see manifestations of them within the TA community. There are real issues in the TA community in terms of standards, with some trainers saying one thing that's not in the handbook, and all sorts of difficult stuff. And so I think we need to do the community analysis, particularly in terms of power dynamics within the community. Complaints for instance, from Ukrainian colleagues that never got heard because Russian colleagues were involved in the committees that were hearing the complaints. I think we need to revisit our values. I think TA has always been very strong on values, but I think we need to revisit those, and there's certainly been some not okay behavior going on, and we need to challenge that. I grew up politically where we boycotted, most of the West boycotted South Africa because it was running an apartheid regime, and it's always seemed strange to me that IATA and ITAA aren't sort of able to have those conversations, that we might exclude an association for a while, for a period of while the country is involved in invasion and so on. And that brings me on to a final point, which I think is crucial, which is that we have to see TA organizations as political. There's been a liberal value of seeing TA organizations as politically neutral, and I would argue very strongly that professional organizations are inherently political, and that we need to own that and have that debate.
Okay, thank you, Keith. So you see some issues in TA community. Maybe we have to change something about our certification system, that a TSTA, for example, has to be checked whether he or she is contributing to community building around TA. Could be another part. Then ask them how is a 101 theme configured. So that's and your thesis that organizations or communities also in the psychotherapy or organizational consulting area are political. I think that's also an interesting thesis. So now to come to our last question, I have to smile a bit because it is I think a bit of a funny question. Marina, to you, what would Eric Byrne say about our situation now? What do you think would be his advice for us?
I think it's a very interesting question, because as I was reflecting, one thing that I realized is, in a sense, we are living in a similar world when Byrne came up with his theory of TA. He came up with his theory of theory in a torn world after the Second World War. And the world was very disturbed. And what did Byrne do? That's what I try to look at. And he came up with this a new perspective on mental health. He opened up the mental health arena for non-medical people. He brought in an educative element in his theory. And he made so much of public addresses, opening up and sharing his ideas to the whole world. So I would think this is an opportunity for all of us to emulate Byrne at this point. If all of us go and do what he did 70 years ago, it will be thousands of Byrnes doing. That's the way I see it. Thank you.
So very interesting. You bring Byrne into the context of what he has to regard in his times, and that maybe there are similar questions after the World War, and how people had to make new theory and new concepts. That's interesting. That brings us maybe a bit away from conservative ideas. So, Keith, what do you think? What's Eric Byrne's advice, or what would you have said in your eyes?
Well, we know he was towards the end of his life particularly more explicit about being against the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So he was against war, pestilence, famine, and death. So he'd have some things to say about any TA people who were supporting war. So that's for sure. Secondly, we know that notwithstanding that, he was somewhat cautious because of his own experiences in being up against the or being called in front of the House Committee on Un-American Activities, famously going there with a paper bag over his head. So he was very cautious about politics. So I think, but he was also very interested in transcultural issues. So I think if he were here and he would have his passport, I would encourage him to come to New Zealand and meet Māori colleagues and talk about cross-cultural psychiatry here. I'd encourage him to go to, because he was a great traveler, I'd encourage him to go to Serbia and meet Daniela and go on the demonstrations that are happening in Serbia. And I'd encourage him to go to Greenland and see what the indigenous people in Greenland think about the idea of being 51st state of the United States of America. I think he'd have some things to say about that.
So you would give Eric Byrne an exploration journey through the world.
I'd ask him to do. I'd ask him to do what he always did, which was to go and ask Martian questions.
I think he was traveling a lot, as I remember. Is that right? Yeah.
The nearest he got to New Zealand was Fiji.
Okay, so he didn't take his wisdom from sitting in a room and studying books, but also to see the world. Okay, so thank you very much, you two speakers. Now we come to the part where the participants, where all people can go into an exchange with each other. Therefore, we will open breakout rooms, and you will be there with some of the people of the world. You don't know whom you get in the moment. And I would like to give you 2 questions, or Sashi, would you like to do that?
Yeah.
Yes. So we have the slide. I cannot read it. So, Sashi, could you give us the questions?
Sure. Gunther?
Yeah.
The first question is, what do you resonate with from what the speakers have said? I'm repeating. What do you resonate with from what the speakers have said? And the second one is, what resources do you think the TA community needs to tackle these problems? What resources do you think the TA community needs to tackle these problems?
And now the groups have the opportunity, and we will really recommend that to give a short report what were the focuses and the topics you talked about. Can I invite the first group? I think we have around 8 groups, and I would like to ask a first group to give some resonance, what they in form of a short 3 or 4 sentence report what you talked about.
How do we know what group we were in, Gunther? Do we know the number of our groups?
You don't know the number, I think, but do you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
It's all right with the group, but anyone just jump in. So we were talking about exclusion and inclusion and anger and sadness about the things within the TA community and the things outside of TA community. And we had some ideas about what can we stress and what can we do. differently, and the importance of dialogue, even if people are polarized. This is a very short discussion, summary of a very big discussion.
Yeah, is there one specific proposal or something that you would like to mention?
Yes, but not here.
Yeah, okay. That's accepted. So thank you, Sari. We would like to hear another group, and then also Marina and Keith can give some resonance to what you report. Could I ask someone from a second group?
I'm happy to speak. We talked a lot about our geographical location and how that affects the kind of news we get, the information we get. We suggested it might be a lovely idea if we could have meetings with the different groups. So, for example, with people from the Ukraine or who are affected by the Ukraine, to really listen to them and to ask the questions, particularly those who are at further locations across the world who may not have the information about what's happening there. Like taking from what Keith said about Bern used to travel, you know, we can travel on Zoom, and we can have those conversations with people in those arenas to really kind of ask the questions and connect in with that community as well with what's happening and how that changes us as well. We talked a lot about political alliance, about perhaps the Bern statement, I'm okay, you know, you're okay, I'm okay, you're okay. How relevant it is in these situations and our impact on that. So we just had some musings around that.
Okay, thank you, Helen. So it's you took the aspect of the community building. I think that's a thing that we are have mentioned before, and so also the question of are we political? How are we political? And also we have had also a discussion in our SEC group in between. We were like a breakout group also. So we had also the ideas how can we be involved in processes and what is possible, and is there something that we have to change under us? That I think that's important. So could I hear, or could we hear another group, and then let's say Marina and Keith can resonate.
Hi, Gunther. I'm happy to do for our group. We had a very interesting discussion. A few key points. Education is the most powerful weapon. Mandela quote. We need to depolarize. We need plugging in, and we had a moment of parallel process. We need plugging in. The cost of training, and whether or not one of the things that could be looked at is a promotion of, perhaps in preparation for exams, as to demonstrate some level of low cost or no cost work with the community. And finally, from the Ukraine, a question for how do I be okay with people who support TA philosophy but are attacking us? When things are difficult, it's important to stay in the conversation. So those were the things, some of the things. We had a very good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. There's a lot of in it. So Marina and Keith, I would like to ask you to the resonance.
I'm inspired to hear the word dialogue coming from the group one. In times of disturbance, dialogue, it's so very important an approach. And I'm also inspired to hear from the second group the concept of reaching out to people who can't come and taking the initiative. And the key word I hear from group 3 is education. Again, very inspiring, and taking on the responsibility of educating and strengthening through education. That I think resonates with what I was sharing, and I'm happy to hear the groups resonate with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. And Keith?
Yes, briefly, I resonate with, I think it was Helen, the point that you made about location and the importance of geography, both in terms of having information, getting information. I've been very engaged in the idea of local knowledge being equally valuable to supposed universal knowledge, and actually universal knowledge being somewhat problematic. So that's one of the resonances. When I hear Mo, from your group, depolarizing, it sounds good, but I think that's often called for from a position of power. I'm kind of concerned, when I hear things like, "Oh, we've got to be neutral, we've got to be even-handed, we've got to depolarize." There's always the power dynamic, and my colleague and friend Claude Steiner talked about the political communication. There's always a political message in communication, and that's the meta communication. So I sort of look at who's calling for the depolarization. So I suppose I'm wanting to subject that also to a bit of a political analysis. And the philosophy in attacking, I don't think it's consistent with TA philosophy to attack people. So I'd probably question that as well in terms of linking it more robustly to theory. But mostly it sounds great that you're having the conversations.
Okay, thank you, Keith. So we have other groups.
Yeah, I can go, Gunther.
Hi, James.
Hi there. Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So we would love to hear a little. Our group would love to hear a bit more from Keith on how he defines politics, because I think the word political is inherently problematic, and we suspect that Keith has got more definition which might help us there. I think I want to return to the topic of polarization, and I think the world has got increasingly polarized, and everything, if we go back to the US and the influence that it has on the world, has become a partisan issue, way more so than when Byrne did his writings. So it seems like everything has to be attached to a big P politics, and I suspect, Keith, you are talking about small p. So that's kind of at the meta level. At the TA level, one of the things that we talked about was, before the Russia-Ukraine conflict, our understanding was that Russians and Ukrainians work together extensively. And it's like, when something happens at the national level, how do you then respond to that and the change that it introduces? And it's interesting as well, because we don't have a particularly large number of Israeli or Middle Eastern members. So we've not had to deal so closely with that conflict, for example, within our confines. So there's something about our membership profile also influences what we look at and the degree to which we are forced to look at things. And we covered a lot more, but that probably will do for now, Gunther.
Okay, thank you, James. So although Keith is addressed himself, but let us hear another group before.
Can I speak? We focused on responsibility, our responsibility actually for living our TA values. And I think that probably includes confronting one another when we fall short of living those values. But also to use our TA, like I suggested, we can use our understanding of script to understand others, but also ourselves, and where we might therefore watch that we're not just bystanders, that we're engaged in terms of, well, what's going on here and how can we understand it, maybe in TA terms, like in terms of script, and our own frames of reference, our own bias in those conversations. So although we have good values, it's a real challenge to live them out and to really be perhaps self-aware too, of what we're bringing into the conversation.
So thank you, Alistair. Maybe that could be another aspect for us to think about. We, in our group, we talked about the white TA, how white is TA in everything or in a lot of certification process, and also maybe we always focus on the personal script, but there is also a cultural script, and maybe there is a political script, and that is really challenged, I think, in the moment in the world disturbances.
Yeah, just to as a rejoinder, yes, I was actually translating that into understanding Putin and Trump in terms of script as well, and national scripts.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. Is there another group? In a moment.
Yes, there are us.
Fine.
Well, now you can see me. That's us. I'm the ghost. I like the moment where what we got to, because we were a group from India, Slovakia, Croatia, and Japan. And I was speaking about non-visible, actually, political situation, what is happening in our country, what world can see Slovakia from the political newspapers or from the newspapers news from the political side, and what actually people live in the country. And this was for me, sharing this from my point of view came also from fear of what's happening in country from Japan, from India, like in the inside, what is happening in country, and we don't know because we don't live there, or if we come there as a visitors, we don't have the same connection as people who actually live there. But at the end, we came to the issue that we are, first of all, if we come to world politics, it means personal, and if we come to each other as a person to person, it's not that you are separated from me, but you are connected with me, and I can talk to you on the personal level. So this is what I like. Just before the breakup from the room, we came to person, and then we can start with okay and okay point of view.
Okay, thank you. I'm just in the chat. So Mo, you wrote that your comment you think it was not clear enough, so you have a moment to clarify it, Mo.
Oh, thank you, Gunther. No, it was in Keith's response, because I was thinking, Keith, that you were probably. I agreed with what you were saying about consideration of whether or not if a national organisation is against our philosophy and standards in TA, that it might be considered to exclude organisations like that. I would go with that rather than against it. I wasn't talking about you have to have everybody, even if they're being murderous. Does that make it clear?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
So I give the word back to Marina and Keith to maybe you have some ideas to what James, Alistair, and what is her name, CR said, and you have the room now, space. Marina.
I think the awareness about polarization and the need for depolarization, the thinking about it, the discussion about it in the group is really a good awareness of and good response to the awareness of what is going around. And taking it from there, I see the discussion on applying TA in what we do. Using our understanding, using our theory for whatever engagement we have with the community or people around us. That again sounds very inspiring to me, very constructive way of approaching the problem. And coming to the third group's discussion, I also hear it as a constructive way of looking at what is going around and what can we do about community building. That's what I'm hearing from what I said. I don't know, I'm not fully clear. That's what I understood from what Group 3 said. So I hear it all as a very constructive approach to the disturbances that we are seeing around, rather than looking at it in a negative way. And that, I think, is the heart of the message of TA.
Yeah, and with the words like attack or polarization, I think in my mind comes, do we have a theory about conflict, about arguing in TA, or is it always made pathological if there is a disturbance? What we are confronted with real conflicts, and maybe how can we come together? That's in between. But now, Keith, you have the word.
Thank you. It's so rich. I'm really appreciating the comments, and just think this could be the stuff of much more. Just on that last point, Gunther, I think it's not insignificant that Bern talked about two methods of TA. One was the contractual method, and the other was open communication. And as we know, there's been reams written about contracts, but almost nothing written about open communication. What is open communication? And I know that's something that Sari and I have talked about, so we can commit to saying that we're going to do something about that in terms of writing something, because there's a lot more to be said. And that gets us into that idea about confrontation. Again, Bern had a therapeutic operation of confrontation, anything that disconcerts the parent and child. Again, I think that's a useful way to think about conflict. So there's a bit more to do on that. Addressing your point, James, about politics, I think it's a good pickup. I think of politics very simply in this context, given that we've only got a few minutes, of going back to the Greek idea of the polis and the community. So very much that we can't not be political. We are political organizations, are political people, are political animals, Aristotle onwards. And that again, it's better to sort of own that rather than separate it. And because I think if we separate it, we kind of leave it somewhere over there, and then it can't be analyzed. So I prefer to talk about politics as sort of all around. And one of my great honors in receiving this year's Everett Byrne Memorial Award, one of the articles that was put forward as to receive the award is an article on TA and politics, which I actually published not in the TAJ, but in a journal called Psychotherapy and Politics International. So that's now available through that link in the script, where I do an analysis of how TA has addressed politics in the past. So almost to sort of kind of put it back on the agenda rather than something that we should avoid or think of as, I think Steve Cartman wrote to me once saying everybody knows that the politics is a critical parent adapted child in a transaction. Obviously not, he was disagreeing with me, and I was disagreeing with him. So that would be my broad sort of picture of let's talk about politics. And I think we have a strong tradition of radical psychiatry within TA, been revitalized in recent years, that gives us lots of ideas and theory and models and concepts to talk about politics.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I imagine that we lost one or two groups. Is there another group who can give a report?
Yes, I could do that.
Yes.
Also in the name of Helen and Joanna. Sumitra fell out of our group, unfortunately, because of travel. What we discussed is two things. That one is there is sometimes hesitance in ourselves to take a political role. So it's also a personal process of wanting to do something, but finding ourselves sometimes not doing it, and wondering what's going on inside of us. And the second thing is that we thought, okay, we heard the invitation of Marina, more as, you know, taking a socially active role, while Keith also considered a lot what we do inside the TA community. And we felt that the world is sort of asking us to step outside in this period, because we cannot be not involved in what's going on around us. And then is the internal important, and does it suck up all the energy, or do we devote the energy going outside? And is the internal dynamic just to be supposed to be helpful to move outside and be active in the world? That's what we talked about a bit. So what we said, in our ideal situation, the TA world would be a place where you can integrate all of the things that you have, and it's a secure base where people can bring in their other frames of reference and use whatever potential they have to contribute to the world around them. And if we translate that to the TA world, we said, okay, having the you know, being more invitational for people to go outside with what they have, rather than fitting into the norm of what you need to be able to, let's say, produce as in terms of TA language. And the other thing is, you know, can we help ourselves in the community to be more comfortable with the political debate, debate about interests, and practice, you know, have practice areas where we can help ourselves being more intensely involved in uncomfortable debates.
So thank you, Eric Jan. It's, I think, an important question. Are we only oriented inside of our professional or business doing, or should we use our ethics and our community or okay positions also to have some impact to the outside? I think that's a very important question, and it's a decision for everyone. So is there any other group I missed up to now?
Yeah, our group has not yet reported, so I will talk on behalf of our group.
Hi, Namada.
So we had a group of people from different nations, from Netherlands, Ukrainian, from UK. There was another person from India. I'm from India. There was another person from India. So it was a mixed group. So we resonated with the concept of, as a TA person, we educate our community, reach out to people. I'm an educator. So we reach out to people and educate them, from raising a kid to the individuals with whom we interact with. So education as tool. And other things we discussed were the diversity among the TA community, maybe the culture, the languages, or different frame of references, the values each one has from different countries. And so all this have to be understood by the TA community before we discuss things that was discussed in the group. And the need for a common language like English or anything through which we can express ourselves. So that was also discussed. And how the power dynamics in the condition of a war or something, it is between the top people in the political situation between two countries. There are problems, but how the people get affected with their own identities. And there was a problem discussed about speaking their own native language. Because of the war, they're not able to speak in their own native language. So such basic things were also presented as problems. So many things we discussed, and it was a useful discussion.
So thank you, Namada. I think that is one of the aims of our SEC, the Social Engagement Committee, also to bring people together and to have an exchange like we had today. And maybe you you see that I'm rounding it up now, and because maybe I forgot one of the groups that they could write something into the chat, maybe, but we have to come to an end. We had a tight plan today. I hope we haven't been in a hurry up driver, and everyone felt in such a way comfortable that he or she could say what was wanted. And now I would like to give the word back to my colleagues from the SEC and the two speakers, Luca, Sashi, Keith, and Marina. What would you say are your takeaways from today? Luca.
My takeaway is that we need to have these dialogues. I mean, this is my takeaway, that we sort of had this process. I think we need to have the dialogues around power dynamics and taking a stand within our TA community. Also resonated a lot around the importance of engaging in the community. But the precious thing for me is, yeah, we need to have these dialogues within our community. So thank you very much to everybody.
Okay, Sashi?
Yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway is community building, and I'm connecting it with Burns' boundaries: permeable, semi-permeable, and impermeable. So how do we make our boundaries, psychological, social, cognitive boundaries, more permeable? And his concept of energy, bound, unbound, and free, and have a free flow of energy within and outside in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sashi. Keith or Marina? Say Marina.
Yeah, I'm really inspired to listen to the thoughts that came up in the group. And I think it's a very important stage that we created, that so many of us could come together and voice our thoughts. And as we know, even voicing our thoughts gives us more clarity. And I'm really inspired to hear the thoughts on reaching out, going beyond, and understanding the negative, but looking at it constructively. That's what I saw happen in all the groups. That's really something beautiful. And that I think, I mean, that gives a lot of hope, in the sense that as a community, we are living our value. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith?
Wow, there's so much come up in the meeting, and I'm just seeing it in the chat. I really agree with you, Sophie, about the radical education, language. Absolutely, we need to decenter the dominance of the English language. It's a privilege to be a native English speaker, but I think it's also a problem for a lot of our communication. And I'm a bit involved in working with some interpreters about that. I like the idea of open dialogue and more having almost helping people, supporting people to have more difficult conversations, because I mean, you know, easy conversations are easy. It's difficult conversations that are more difficult. So, you know, we need to do that. And what I'm ending with is a good flashback to a conference we had here in Aotearoa, New Zealand in November, where the title was a Māori concept and an English kind of interpretation, and the Māori concept was karangarua, which is about falling across difference, and the English kind of subtitle was unity through diversity in relationship. I think there's an overemphasis on unity, and that we really need to look at more of the difficult stuff, the conflict, the diversity, and through that conversation we will get to a genuine unity, if ever. So yeah, I suppose that's kind of what I'm taking away. And thank you so much, SEC, for being brave enough to put on this third feature and invite Marina and myself to speak in the way we have.
So thank you, Keith. Thank you all. And thank you for Maria. I think she reported from a group in the chat that we hadn't time to see in the plenary now. Thank you, Maria, for commenting. So we come to an end, and I first said that it is the first part or a first version of this webinar, we will have another one for the Western Hemisphere, where we have Diane Salters and Valerie Betts as speakers. Maybe those people who are able to get in contact to this. We are not sure about the date in the moment. We're in the planning phase still, and therefore you will get the information about the usual channels of ITAA. But you are all invited to come back, and we will stay in contact. For me, the takeaway today is again, I think there is a difference between TA training and usual TA communication and the form of dialogue. And I think maybe we can foster or improve this part of dialogue also in our TA community, and that it is open, that there are no TSTAs, CTAs, or some forms like that, or that all people are on the same level in a dialogue.